Like that. Okay, good evening, everyone, to our February 2023 Operations Policy and Planning Committee. I'm the chair of the committee, Rob Painter, and I would like to begin our meeting with our acknowledgement of the traditional territories. The Greater Victoria School District wishes to recognize and acknowledge the Esquimalt and Songhees nations, on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. That in mind, can I ask for a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Kwan, thank you. Any changes to the agenda as presented? Seeing nothing, all those in favor of the agenda as printed? And that's unanimous. And approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the January 16th, 2023 Ops Committee. Any changes or amendments to that? I see no response. So with that in mind, I will move that the January 16th, 2023 Operations Policy and Planning Committee meeting minutes be approved. All those in favor? And unanimous again, thank you. Business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our presentations to the committee. And tonight we'll be hearing from Lindsay Plum, the PAC chair at Northridge Elementary. Lindsay, you have 5 minutes. I'll give you a note when we get to 4 minutes and start waving frantically when you're at 5.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Rob. Well, thanks everyone for having me tonight. I will go ahead and share my screen so that you can see what I'm looking at here. So I believe most of you have received our package to give you a bit of a background of what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. We engaged the school district to construct a naturescape outdoor playground for us last year. Sorry, my controls are not working. There we go. So a few questions, how can the Board of Trustees support us? How can this situation be changed to avoid the same repeat for future PACs? And what is the current required reporting by the school to PACs like us for projects like this? So this is the proposed project. As you can see where the blue arrow is, it's a nature playground with several boulders and logs. In this particular diagram, there is 10 boulders and 10 logs. What you will not see in particular is a balance beam that was added to the project later on. And paid for additionally. And what you also will not see is the accessible pathway to the playground. We moved the location of the playground. So those are two changes that you do not see on this original drawing. But when I go over to this next drawing, this is what was delivered. And what you will see is 4 boulders and 1 balance beam. So significantly different than the proposed and agreed upon design. We are not sure who changed the design. We have asked facilities where this new design came from. Nobody seems to know who created it or what computer it came from. But at some point after the check was signed by our PAC, the design was completely altered. And so then we get into the project comparison. On the left-hand side, what we agreed upon. On the right-hand side, what was delivered. The top line was supposed to be 5,400 square feet. We got 1,600 square feet, 10 boulders versus 4 boulders. So lots of differences, as you can see, going down the list. The 5R, which if you're not aware of that term, that's the playground, the wood chips. the engineered wood chips. 5,400 square feet were required for that. And we got 1,600 square feet, of course, because it is so much smaller. And so when we started to look at this, I began to ask some more questions on why is it different and how do the dollars differ between what was agreed upon and what was delivered. So on the left-hand side, we have what was quoted, $44,000, almost $45,000. The naturescape with the added balance beam, the pathway, some trees with irrigation. And when I began asking these questions, after asking many, many times for more information, on November 5th, we got an email to the school stating that the following has been spent and completed to total $39,000. So on November 5th, we were given the impression that all of the money had been spent. And we kept looking at each other, trying to figure out how this is possible, not to mention why, oh, why would anybody ever spend $4,000 on 4 small rocks? Then when we asked a few more questions, just last month, we got some more answers and a better breakdown. This was the first time we'd ever seen a spreadsheet of any sort. And you can see at the bottom there that the difference was almost $11,000, what was quoted versus what was spent. So at this point, we realized there's $11,000 that $11,000 of PAC raised funds that had not been spent. However, just 6 weeks prior to this, we had been told by facilities that the money was spent. So moving on to resolutions, Eric Fisher has come on board from facilities to completely change the trajectory of this project. I cannot say enough wonderful things about him. And we are happy with this design, which he has got a crew on site already this week to rectify the design. So we are quite happy with what we will end up with, say a month from now and moving forward. The facilities has also offered to build a $14,000 rock amphitheater that actually was on that first design that I showed you, and we decided to eliminate it back then because we didn't have the funds to cover the entire project. So that project is now back on the table and being done by facilities, like I say, for about $14,000. So how I suppose that project, they're using some of that $11,000 or $12,000 that they had left over to fund the secondary project. And so our biggest concerns are, how the design was completely altered without our us being aware at all. When I asked for communication and accountings, it was very, very difficult for me to obtain any of that information. When I did obtain that information, I was told that all the money had been spent according to plan. And when I further asked additional questions, we now find that there's $11,000. So as parents who work very hard, as you all know, to fundraise these kinds of projects, we're feeling a little, a little not taken care of by the district. If I hadn't continued to ask, what would the resolution have been? Where would that $11,000 have ended up? And so we wanted to bring this to other, make others aware and find out, what are the protocols when the PAC steps in at any school to ask for a project such as this. When do we get to get an accounting? When do we get to have some updates? Can the district change our plans after we've already signed the check? And if there is money left over, should we be notified? And if we should be notified, when would that be? And should we get a refund for the difference?
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Any questions or comments? Sorry, I'm just sorting out my screen. I do see our VC PAC Chair, Tracy Humphreys. Please go ahead, Tracy.
Thanks, Rob. I just wanted to say hi, Lindsay, and thank you so much for this excellent presentation. It really, it's not easy to come forward with a question like this and these kinds of concerns. And I think it and VCPAC was already made aware from Northridge about this situation, and I'm glad to see the PAC bringing it forward themselves. And those questions are, the questions are for this PAC, but also, they are this district impacting question. What is the process? Is there policy around this, and how PAC funds are being spent? Not just on facilities, to me, it's a broader question, but definitely this, it raises a lot of questions and concerns. And I know that there are also bigger projects that have happened in the past by different PACs, and there are big projects upcoming as well that will be done by facilities. And so, definitely we have an expectation that there's going to be a higher level of due diligence, I guess.
Oversight?
Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Hey, Trustee Kwan.
Yeah, thanks. I just wondered if there was staff that maybe were able to speak to some of this. I know that I think there's probably protocols and policies, processes that have been put in place since this has happened. And I just wondered if there was anyone that, was able to speak to it at this time, or, just put it out there to see if there's any more information that might be able to be shared right now.
I could probably speak to some of it.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the project itself, how these projects get set up is they're considered a school-funded project, even though they're funded through the PAC. And so there is a process that's in place in facilities where they use their current software system to set up a request for a project. I believe it generally goes through the school. So it would be communication from the PAC to the school principal and then submitted that way through facilities. I know over the past few years, there's been some changes around how those are processed. I think we used to do a lot more with email, which we didn't have as good a tracking system on, but we're currently entering all of these requests into what is now called eBase. And so when there's a quote, every communication between the school, and if there is communication with the PAC, gets recorded in that system. On the financial side, we use a special account to track all of our school-funded projects. And historically, they have been tracked by service request numbers, which there can be multiple service request numbers for a project, which got quite confusing. And so in the last couple of years, we made a change so that every project that goes through that account has its own unique subledger. And so all of the costs are now tied to the subledger. So I think if we were to look this year, we would be able to see at a glance how much has been spent on a project like a PAC funded project. So it's much easier for us to see that. And we also report to facilities on a monthly basis with those amounts. If you were to go back a couple of years, it would be much more difficult to see that breakdown. One thing we did talk about is that most of the projects that are in there are school funded and not PAC funded, and we haven't really had a formal reporting function on PAC funded projects or any projects that are funded from external parties. So it could be even an out of school care provider at a school if they wanted something done. And so I think moving forward as a next step is to have a reporting out function when a PAC project or an externally funded project is completed, so that there's full transparency on the collection of funds and the spending of funds, and that there's no question whether or not funds were left on the table or otherwise. I will say, though, that quite often some of the projects end up the other way, so they're overspent. And so facilities has historically used some, and they're not usually big amounts because we do reconcile them at year end and close them out and carry over unspent funds to the next year. But sometimes they go over and sometimes they go under, and they kind of offset each other. But I would say that if we saw a project that had $11,000 left at the end of this year, we would have certainly questioned it if we were told that it was completed. And sometimes what happens is that there are costs that get recorded in facilities in their operating fund that need to be transferred over. So we have talked about that too, just especially for PAC projects, is to make sure that we're capturing all of the costs in that subledger, and so that we can have accurate reporting at the end of the project and at the end of our fiscal year.
Trustee Duncan, and then Lindsay Plum.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I just really want to say thank you to Lindsay for raising it with us. It sounds like there's some work going on behind the scenes in order to address the concerns and put in place some process-related changes to increase the level of accountability and transparency when it comes to managing these projects, and some changes in terms of financial reporting from what we're hearing, and also around the project management aspect, of managing projects that are funded by PACs. It sounds like there's still some work to do around defining the projects at the beginning, and then reporting out if there is a change in scope to the project as a result of maybe a labor shortage, a material shortage, the reality of the space might impact the scope of the project. So, but of course that needs to be communicated back, and accountability needs to be clear. So thank you so much for raising it. And we'll be looking to staff and to the board to look at the processes moving forward, and just to make sure that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's so that this doesn't happen again. But thank you so much for coming tonight and making us aware of it.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. I just had one final question. I was unsure of the fiscal year for the district. Like when Katrina's mentioning last year and this year, are we talking calendar school or fiscal? Our project started in 2021. It finished in 2022. Now we're in 2023. So where does this project land in terms of upgraded, processes? Yeah, like I say, it's been this school year. So if those softwares are being used, my hope and expectation would be that I could quickly and easily ask for a report generated by that software, rather than going by emails or memories or any of the other things that I feel like we've been going by on this project.
Jamie?
Katrina?
Yeah.
Secretary Treasurer, sorry.
When I say last year and this year, I do, and fiscal year, it's July 1st to June 30th. So it's not quite the school year, but not the calendar year.
Got it.
And and we would, if it was did you say 2021?
Yeah, that first drawing has a date of June 2021 on it.
I think it would depend on when we received the check from you. So whenever facilities quoted you and then you gave us the check, that would be the year in which we would have started tracking the expenditures. So I think it might be in the current school year, if I'm not mistaken.
The check would have been delivered fall of 2021. The project was supposed to start and finish before Christmas 2021. And the fences came down on the very last day of school in June.
Okay.
Um,
I would have
and
to
then now
double
we're into
check.
this year, so
Yeah.
it's a little bit hard to track the, the thread.
Okay. I'd have to
Mhm.
double check, but what might have happened then is if the funds were collected in September 2021 and they weren't spent at that point, we would have carried over the budget to the current year.
Mhm.
And so it would have been sitting there as a project in progress in the current year.
Mhm. Okay,
But I can always double check that.
that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Tracy,
Sorry, I'll be quick. I appreciate having an extra moment. Thank you so much for the details on how things are processed within the district, because, it's obviously not something we're typically going to be looking at. What I feel like PACs are going to want is to have those expectations laid out in the beginning in some sort of contractual format, right? Because then, they wouldn't end up in a situation like it is right now with lack of clarity and, knowing those processes that can all be outlined in something like that. And then also, I just wanted to say it'd be nice, as Lindsay said, to know that an interim reporting would be available if requested. That's, the only things I would add. I really, really appreciate, because it does make a lot of sense to look at things that are being funded by PACs, or, as you say, out of school care, or, maybe some other external people that they need a different process and they need clarity on what it's going to look like. Thank you.
Trustee Kwan.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of conclude here. I wanted to say, first of all, thank you, Lindsay. And I see, I'm super happy that you came forward, and I know that you're happy with kind of what the district has done and what's happening with your playground now. But I do think it's important for you to come forward and bring this here. I don't, we don't want to see that happening again. And it only makes us better when you can bring this forward. So I just really appreciate you being here tonight and bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
And I'll throw in my 2 bits at the end. The one lesson I continue to try to learn now into my 5th decade, something like that, is the need to communicate more. And as Tracy pointed out, communications up front, I think there may be some scope for improvement there. Obviously not knowing the details, but the notion that a plan was submitted and the results, decisions were made outside of the loop, and the project went forward in a different format, suggests that the flow of communications with the PAC wasn't as good as it could be. In situations like this, I do recognize that the administrator in a school is a primary contact, but I think we do need to look at PACs and recognize them as partners in this and not simply a funding source. And I know that's not the intent, but when they're not in the loop and they're not up to date on communications and changes to proposals, it can become, well, it leaves room for questions to flourish. So I would really like to see us moving forward with a recognition that PACs are part of our educational community and they're partners in this process, and that they should be involved in the decision-making process as we go forward. All right. Thank you very much, Lindsay. You're of course welcome to stay with us for the evening, but if you have other priorities, we also appreciate that as well. Bye now. We'll move on to C, Superintendent's Report, beginning with C1, the 2023-2024 and 2024-2025 calendar drafts, and we're looking to Associate Superintendent Arts for this.
Thank you. And through the chair, you will see in your package proposed motion for school calendars for the next 2 years coming up, 23-24 as well as 24-25. I believe this will be new. I can't remember time our district has done multiple years at one time, but we're bringing a 2-year calendar. I'm bringing a 2-year calendar forward to you for a couple of reasons. One, our neighboring district, Suk and Saanich, last year actually went with 3-year calendars. So these will be the last 2 years to align with our neighboring districts. And it also allows for our community members to have additional time in planning when they know when breaks and that are going to be happening in our schools. So, so you see the dates that are broken down there. We align with Suk and Saanich and almost everything we do for sure with our major winter break, spring break, start of school, that sort of thing. There are a couple of Pro D days that do not align with both districts. And the reason for that, though, is when we looked at this, Suk and Saanich do not align on those days. So it was impossible for us to align with all 3 because they both had a separate date. So we aligned with 2 out of 3 each time. That's the dates. I'm happy to answer questions that people may have around this. And the idea would be hopefully to bring a 2 or 3 year calendar forward in the future, working with Suk and Saanich.
Questions, Trustee Duncan?
No, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Associate Superintendent Arts for bringing this forward. I think it's great to see the 2-year calendar go out for feedback from the public. Makes a lot of sense to me, and so thank you so much for undertaking that work. I just wondered if you could clarify how members of the public can provide their feedback on the draft calendar during the month-long consultation period.
Yeah, and thank you, Trustee Duncan. And as you see the motion, it does go on the website for 30 days. And we will do a media release and messaging out to all families and parents for them to be able to provide feedback on these dates that will then be shared with you as board members around the feedback that we receive. So all families and parents will be asked to provide feedback if they wish.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Associate Superintendent Arts. I was really impressed actually when I looked at the calendars of the other districts, just how precisely these aligned, and I think that'll go a long way to alleviating concerns of the community and making it just that much easier to plan. So with that in mind, we have a proposed motion that the Board of Education of School District Number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the posting of the following 2023, 2024, and 2024-2025 school calendars on the school district's website for a period of 1 month. Is that people asking questions or people voting? Okay, all those in favor. Okay, we'll do that. I'll do that. All those in favor part. No, sorry. People had questions. I'm trying to understand.
I was
2 people
move
have
it,
questions.
Rob.
What's that?
I was going to move it, Chair, because no one had actually moved it.
Thank you. Trustee Gagnon moves the motion. Now, do we have any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, and that is unanimous. And I'll get back on track right now. We have no personnel items, so we'll move on to E, Finance and Legal Affairs, beginning with E1, 2023-2024 enrollment, kindergarten enrollment, Associate Superintendent Arts.
Thank you. And through the chair, again, you will see in your backup, we have the information about our February kindergarten registration numbers from this year. I've also provided with you February enrollment numbers from the past couple of years for kindergarten. And so you will notice that we are declining in the kindergarten registration at this time. 2 years ago in February, we had 1,370 kindergarten K students. This year at the same time, we have 1,244. So we've known that we are projected to be declining. That's showing in our kindergarten numbers. I've also shared with you the number of grade 5s who are leaving elementary school. So next year, right now, we have 1,244 we know would like to come in, and we have 1,545 who are leaving. So we are seeing an increase in our middle and secondary schools as this larger group goes through, but a decrease in our kindergarten, numbers. You also know that we come September, though, our historical trends are that September 30th kindergarten numbers are higher than our February enrollment. So we have in the past averaged about 80 to 100 additional kindergarten students. So when we're looking at our numbers in the future, we are being fairly aggressive in our numbers for kindergarten because we anticipate that this should grow slightly. Historically, that's what's happened, but slight decrease in our numbers over the last 3 years as to be expected.
Any questions? Trustee Duncan, followed by Trustee Kwan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify. So when I looked at these, and I appreciate the contextual comment around the September numbers tend to grow when it comes to kindergarten enrollment. And so I'm wondering how we take account of that historical trend where we see an increase in September from our, predicted amount of enrollment in February. I'm thinking in particular of Tillicum, where we were really sort of caught off guard when it came to kindergarten enrollment, seeing a lot more enrollment than we had planned for. So I'm just wondering how we can take account of that increase in September, just from a planning perspective. Obviously, there's a funding aspect to all of this as well, but I'm more interested in from a planning perspective.
Ms. Lutner, would you like to take that one on?
Thanks. So in our kindergarten enrollment projections, we actually added on 110 FTE. So that's where we're being a little more aggressive. So that's what the preliminary budget's going to be based on.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. That absolutely explains it. And I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
And Trustee Kwan.
Yeah, I'm just kind of along those same lines. I was just curious. I know Associate Superintendent Arts had described kind of how the system, I think Beauregard, you said, works and how, he puts numbers in. And I know that just lately in the last, week or so, we've heard some, some tidbits about some spending perhaps on housing. And I think right now, Victoria City Council is also looking at approving some housing as well. And I wondered if any of that would, makes an impact or whether that would change enrollment at all in any way.
So good question. Beauregard does not take local knowledge into effect, but it does look at if you know the development is coming, you can actually put that into it, and it has a calculation. A 30 complex apartment will generate this many students on average, but that's not specific to Victoria. That's their data that they do for everywhere. So it looks at that a little bit, but not super accurately, to be honest. And in general, Beauregard projects more aggressively than what we actually see in the end, and that's the work that Julie does in trying to balance that and look at all those trends in the past. But it kind of does, Trustee Kwan, but not exactly.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, sorry, just a follow-up, if I may, Chair. Just around what we're hearing around immigration and plans to see more immigration. And we know that a lot of folks that come to Canada will be settling in British Columbia. So I'm wondering what tools we have at our disposal to plan and predict for that. Is there something in Beauregard that would allow us to do that as well? Or is that something kind of beyond the scope of the Beauregard tool?
Yeah, again, great question. I don't believe that Mr. Powell maybe knows more, but I don't believe it looks like immigration like all the Ukraine or something like that. It doesn't have that knowledge base in it. It may look at migration between provinces or over time, but not a sudden influx because of a spike in immigration. I don't believe it does.
If I may, Chair, just a quick follow-up. And so what about the ministry? Is the province telling us anything about what to expect? And are they providing us with any intel, so to speak, on how to prepare? I mean, we know that a lot of school districts in our province are facing space constraints. are relying on portables or learning studios, depending on who you ask. I think it means the same thing. But and so, as a province, no, I mean, we know, like, we're all aware that we're expecting folks to move to BC, and some of those folks will be families with children, they're school-age children. So are we hearing anything from the province? And I appreciate if this might be more a question more well suited to the superintendent, but are we hearing anything from the ministry around that?
Thank you, Trustee Duncan. Yes, we have heard that Victoria School District is one of probably 6 in the province that is tending to grow based on immigration or migration. Having said that, though, I would say that the 110 additional students in kindergarten would reflect that to a certain degree. It may not be, again, exact, but I think parts of that are embedded into this projection.
Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing nothing further, thank you very much, Solicitor Superintendent Arts. We'll move on to District Principal Powell with late French immersion enrollment.
Thanks, Trustee Painter. Just an update for the benefit of those that don't have the memo that I was sent to trustees. Just an update on late French immersion registration numbers. So coming back and looking at how that went. As we were trying to continue to assess the interests of the entire community, entire school district that we have, to know the interest that we might have for a district program, late French immersion. We changed a few things with the online registration. Initially, so the first thing we did was we added a checkbox at the start of the applications where families could identify if they only would attend late French immersion if Cedar Hill, if it were to be offered at Cedar Hill. So there was a checkbox right away. And as soon as you click that, transfers, things below it disappeared. And then you would be asked to fill out the rest of the registration form, last name, first name, address, all the things, and then submit. So they could say if they only wanted to attend late French immersion, if it were offered at Cedar Hill. And then if they didn't choose that, they could choose their catchment school, their late French immersion catchment school. And then they could also indicate whether they could choose they would prefer to register their child at Cedar Hill should it be offered again at that site. So there was 2 opportunities for our parents to tell us how interested they were in late French immersion as a program of choice. So when it came down, the data that we do have, we have 2 points, and this is in the memo again. We had 8 students that said that they would only attend if offered at Cedar Hill Middle School. And we had 6 students said that they would prefer to attend late French immersion if it were offered at Cedar Hill Middle School. Just some of the data from the rest of the district. Arbutus has 28 students with 3 waitlisted. Central has 22 students, so that's changed a little bit. Lansdowne has 29 students, 2 waitlisted. Shoreline has 28 students, 1 waitlisted. So 2 changes from the memo that I wrote last week to you. That's the update of where we are in the district with late French immersion at 4 sites. At this point, I'd be open to questions, Trustee Painter.
Thank you. And any questions? Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, sorry. I'll try to temper my questions for the next one. So
not at all.
So I did thank you, Mr. Powell, very much for the comprehensive memo. Really helpful to sort of see where we are, how we've taken account of the feedback that we received from parents at Cedar Hill, and collected data to assist us with our planning. I just had a couple of sort of clarifying questions. I wanted to confirm first that the numbers, so that at the 4 sites, the enrollment numbers in the memo with the updates that you provided tonight, that those take account of all of the Cedar Hill families interested?
Yes,
okay.
They do take account, yes.
Perfect, yeah. And then the only other thing I just wanted to clarify was around the catchment boundary. So this is something that's sort of come out of all of this for me, as I've sort of thought, about where we are with this. If we do continue forward with the 4 sites, is there a need for us to reconsider the catchment boundaries for late French immersion? So to take account of some of the traveling time and the distance involved for some families, if we don't have an option moving forward for late French immersion at Cedar Hill. I wondered if you or your colleagues had a view on that.
Just, I can start with a few things. So as you see in the memo, we have all the students that indicated they were interested in late French immersion, except for the families that said that they would only attend if it was at Cedar Hill. So all the other students will fit into 4 sites. And we looked at distances, but we also looked at capacities as well. I mean, if we put, for example, we have a number of elementary schools. If we put them all towards Arbutus Global Middle School, we'd have a large wait list. So we have three on the wait list right now that are in catchment wait list. So, you know, that's when we talk about looking at redrawing them. I'm not sure exactly how that we would, because you can see, except for Central currently has 6 spots available, but the other ones are all kind of at capacity or with 1 or 2 on the wait list pending. So I'm certainly open to ideas and certainly open to revisiting it and just kind of wondering if maybe you could clarify that question a little bit.
So Trustee Duncan, if I understand, are you asking then if we're working on a 4-school catchment boundary right now or a 5-school with modifications?
Yeah, so I suppose right now my understanding is that the boundaries are drawn based on 5 locations, and so maybe I'm incorrect in that assumption, but my understanding is that the boundaries are drawn based on 5 locations when we're actually moving to 4. And then, you know, I was minded of, was it 8 families indicated that they would only be interested in late French immersion if there was an option at Cedar Hill. So I wanted to clarify whether we had accounted for those 8 in the enrollment numbers at each of the 4 locations that we propose to have a late French immersion class or classes. So, and again, so maybe I might be misinformed, but my understanding is that, I guess, first and foremost, that with 5 sites, we had 5 catchment boundaries. So families would know which late French immersion site their residential address fell within. And if we move to 4, then those boundaries, I'm wondering if there's a need to reconsider or realign those boundaries. And then my other question in terms of clarifying what I meant, we had 2 data sets. We had, I think it was 8 students or 8 families that indicated they would only be interested in late French immersion if it was offered at Cedar Hill. And I believe it was 6 families indicated that they would prefer to attend at Cedar Hill, but they would still be interested in late French immersion at one of the other 4 sites. So I wanted to confirm that the enrollment numbers at each of the 4 sites takes account of the 8 families that indicated that they would only attend if it was at Cedar Hill.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying the 8.
My pleasure.
The 8 are not included in late numbers, because as soon as a checkbox is said, I'd only attend at Cedar Hill, it then also says in part of that statement, please note that this does not ensure that, or you will be placed in a late French immersion at one of the other 4 sites. So it's really clear. So that 8. So that's the first piece. The second part, in terms of looking at catchments, that is something that we can certainly review and look at again for sure. But everyone with an address right now would be able to put it in and know which late French immersion catchment they would be in.
And can you just clarify, Principal Powell, that would be based on the 4 current schools offering?
That is based on the 4 current sites for the program of choice. Yes.
Thank you.
So, Chair, may I just clarify then?
Yeah.
So for Cedar Hill families, so families that live within the Cedar Hill catchment boundary, where are they being funneled then? Where would their late French immersion middle school be now?
It would going in, if they were previously going in, it's Doncaster is going to Lansdowne, Brayfoot is going to Arbutus. I could go through all of them, but that's how it worked. And then Cedar Hill is still their English catchment.
Yeah.
And it's still an early French immersion catchment as well.
Trustee Gagnon.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Principal Powell. I just want to clarify further to Trustee Duncan's point. The 6 students who said they would prefer to attend late French immersion at Cedar Hill, they are reflected within the other 4 though?
Yes, they're reflected unless unless they decided not to accept a position. So in the state of flux, what happens is in each of those 4 sites, if students are accepted, they get a letter home that says, congratulations, you're accepted. Unless one of those families or 2 of 3 said, no, thank you, we've actually changed our mind and we're going to go to our English catchment school. But all of them were initially captured in those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Kwan.
Okay, a couple of questions here. Appreciate your patience with me. So the first one would be, if there was, of those 6 students that, let's say, were at wanted a spot, whether it was at Cedar Hill or not, and they perhaps were at a school and it wasn't feasible for them transportation wise to get there, and there is say spots at Central, is it possible for them to, you know, elect to go to where another spot would be available for them?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then the second question I had for you was actually around the cost per school year for the late immersion at 4 sites, whether what we're saving as well as what would cost to be added. I think you said 230,000 in your memo. And so I just wondered what that cost entails. Is that just basically teacher for grade 6 and grade 7, or you know, where does that 230 stem from?
Yeah, those are the initial costs, and then I'm going to pass to Secretary Treasurer Stride if she would want to add to that at all. But certainly those were what the initial quote was, is for 2 teachers every year.
Okay.
Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, just one more question that I had, just as I looked at the numbers, so at the 4 sites and looked at the wait list for each site and then the availability of spots. I wondered, like, what it looks like to me is that, you know, if with the 7 spots available, for instance, at Central, we can accommodate all of the waitlisted students, you know, at that site, should they be willing and able to travel to attend at Central. And so is that sort of how we look at it from a planning perspective, that, you know, really what we're looking at is efficiencies and an expectation that families will travel to attend these programs of choice?
Yes. So first of all, yes, the first statement is correct, that all of the students that were interested or have accepted could fit into the 4 sites. And as an aside, and we talked about that at the last meeting, in the last 10 years, 9 of the 10 years, that could have been accomplished. So that this is not a phenomenon that happened this year. And yes, there's a program of choice in our school district, particularly when we're looking for efficiencies. This is one that has come forward and
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? Just as an aside, and it came up as an offhand question in our last conversation, just about wait lists for kindergarten grade 1 entry. I recognize that it may not be the right time of the year to know precisely about that, but has that been something that you're able to take into consideration, just in terms of monitoring how many of those K grade 1 actually translate into someone who still wants to do it by the time they hit middle school?
No, I think it's a really fair question. And it's one of the things we took into account. Marigold last year had the largest wait list by quite a bit. I believe it was 47 students that were unable to get into kindergarten at Marigold last year. This year, it's substantially less than that and still a wait list. The last time I looked at it, I know that it was around 20 students that are unable to get into French immersion kindergarten at that school. We have other schools, like Campus View, that also has a wait list as well, Trustee Painter, but I think it's something to look at when our families are looking for access into French immersion, and that they're trying in kindergarten, again in grade 1, and then perhaps they're going to do it, enter in late French immersion. So I think it's something that we have to continue to connect these two when we're assessing the needs, or sorry, the interests of our community.
Thanks. And on the longer term basis, is what we're dealing with now, are we just going to go to 4 sites only, or will we continue to monitor the appetite for late French immersion and consider going back to Cedar Hill in the future if the demand is there?
This year it wasn't problematic at all. I didn't have much feedback that it was confusing on the online registration. So gaining that data to know if people were still interested in that as a site, it wasn't problematic this year. So to continue to assess if it is an interest, or I mean, the other data that we look at as well is if we have 4 sites and we consistently look at, again, wait lists where students can't access it with substantial wait list. Again, that is data for the board to look at as well in terms of perhaps it's time that we reopen another site.
Okay, thank you. And Trustee Kwan?
Thanks. Yeah, just quickly wondering, am I correct in assuming that this is still going to be brought forward as a budget consideration? Was that what the next step was going to be? I can't remember.
Trustee Kwan, is that question for me? Or to everybody, to the room?
I think it's a question for whoever could answer it. I'm assuming it's probably going to be, it's probably going to end up being the Secretary Treasurer that maybe has a close enough answer.
I don't believe that the Cedar Hill is included in the budget or is currently included as a budget option.
Trustee Duncan?
Yeah, sorry. Just picking up on, I guess, the theme that Trustee Kwan raised. My understanding is that at Cedar Hill, once we have a new school built, that we may not actually have space to accommodate a late French immersion. So, if that is the case, then I think we just need to be very kind of realistic and also clear with folks about what is possible at that site in terms of late French immersion moving forward. So again, I'm not sure if that is a certainty that we're not going to have space once the new school is built, or before an addition can be applied for and built. But if that is the case, then again, I think there's such an important communication piece and a piece around managing, families' expectations about what is possible at that site moving forward. So I just wanted to raise that because I think it's an important point.
Was there anyone in particular you'd like to direct that towards, or was it more of an observation?
No, I think, of course, staff are welcome as always to provide us with guidance and advice. And if I'm completely incorrect in my understanding about what's possible at that site, then please correct me. But it's more just an observation and my own view around, if that is the case, then, I do think that we need to communicate that clearly and early on so that families can take appropriate steps to plan accordingly.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to February 15th, 2023 enrollment estimates and Secretary Treasurer Stride.
Thank you, Chair. So every February 15th, we are required to submit enrollment estimates to the ministry. The enrollment estimate that we submit for next year is what will be used for our funding for the 2023-2024 year as part of our annual budget or our preliminary budget. And we also submit estimates for the following 2 years. So if you want to take a look at page 31 of the agenda package, we've included a table there. And the first column in that table is our actual enrollment for the current year, so 2022-2023. And the table's been broken down into kindergarten as its own category, grades 1 to 5, a total for elementary, total middle, and total secondary. And then we've also given a breakdown of English and French. So if you look at the second column, that is our estimated enrollment for 2023-2024. And that's where we were talking about this year. We've used Beauregard numbers as well as local knowledge, and that would be local as in a committee working in the district, Julie and Sean and Andy and Tom, I believe, is just looking at the numbers and making sure that they make sense for our district. And the third column there, that's blue, is just showing the difference between the current year enrollment and the enrollment that's estimated for next year. So you can see that kindergarten is down overall, English and French by 50. Grade 1 to 5 is down by 35. So elementary is down overall by 85 FTE. Middle is up by 66. And secondary is up by 10. So overall, we're looking at a decrease in student enrollment of about 9 FTE. The fourth and fifth columns, those are the next 2 years, and those are just strictly Beauregard. So we haven't made any adjustments to those amounts. But what will happen is next year, we'll be doing this process again and looking at what numbers Beauregard has, and then making our adjustments based on our knowledge next year. So we are, as you can see, showing a slight decline in our enrollment over the next 3 years, but that could adjust again when we start to look at it again next year. And I'm not sure if there's any questions.
Yes, I think we'll start off with Trustee Gagnon.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is an obvious question or not, but the secondary number for the actual enrollment for 2022-23 has a decimal. And I really want to understand why it's 0.8 at the end of that number.
Yeah.
Rather than just a whole student.
Yeah. I can answer that question if you like.
Please.
Through the chair. The reason the secondary level has decimals is that it's course-based. And so if a student is taking more than a full course load, then we will get proportional FDEs for them. You may recall that the ministry has talked about moving away from this model and going to headcount, but for now that hasn't changed. And so at the secondary level, we will see more than whole people.
Thank you.
Trustee Duncan.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for the table. It's just really accessible. It's easy to understand quickly at a glance. So thank you for putting it together in that way. And then I wonder, and I think this conversation came up possibly last year around our estimates. I'm just wondering whether the ministry does provide us with their data for our district, whether they share their enrollment estimates with us, and so that we can use that as a comparison against our estimates.
I can answer that one, or try?
Please.
They do, when they give us the template to fill out, they do provide estimates with that. I would actually have to defer to Julie because I haven't seen what those numbers are in comparison to the numbers that we're going with. She may be able to add a little bit more to that.
Can I?
Please, I'm sorry, Julie. Yes, I was looking for you there. Where are you on my screen?
So yeah, the ministry, when they send us our 3-year enrollment template, they do provide us with a one-line item. They don't provide us with a breakdown. In the past, I've requested where they get the information from. But because I mean, ideally they would prepare our projections for us, but yeah, and that hasn't been, I know that has been requested from districts in the past. If you have the numbers, why don't you just give them to us? But so far they haven't. So we do a detailed school by school by school. So without that level of detail, we have no idea what the numbers look like. Another big driver in swings in enrollment is the secondary conversion of headcount to FTE. So a school one year might show for every one student they have, the equivalent FTE is 1.06. And in another year, it will be 1.1. So that could lead to a huge swing in enrollment. So we do a detailed analysis on that. But yeah, without a breakdown of what the ministry's headcount is, they just give us an FTE number. It's just a number to us.
Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Julie. I wonder, out of interest, if you recall what is it close to our number, our overall number? So I'm assuming they give us a global number. Yeah, are we close to what their predictions are, or their assessment is?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I could definitely provide that number for you.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's not. It wouldn't be a huge swing. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to E2, monthly financial report. Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you, Chair. So I've provided the monthly financial report for January 2023 for your information. Just so you're aware, the current year is based on the January 2023 month end, and the prior year is what was reported out in the February 2022 ops agenda. So if you're looking at page 32 of the agenda package, you'll see the schedule for operating revenues. And the current year, we're looking at 45% of revenues compared to 44% last year, so very similar. And if you move to page 34 of the agenda package, you'll get the total expenditures. And the current year is showing at 47% compared to 50% last year. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
I was going to say, Trustee Kwan, I'm just waiting for your hand to come up.
Of course you were. Okay, just a couple questions actually, and thank you again for your patience with me. So first of all, I was just wondering if I'll have 3 questions, and maybe I'll just lump them all together because it'll probably be easier for you to answer them all at the same time. The first one was regarding surplus from prior year. So it looks like last year we used up all the surplus from prior year and there was 0% available, whereas this year we have some available. So I just wondered on the details of that. And then as far as trustee benefits go, I just wondered what was involved in that line item. And then school journeys, it looks like we actually had a negative 714. So that means that we recovered 714. And so why would we have a recovery in school journeys?
Yeah, I can answer those questions.
Thank you.
go ahead. So in the current year, the surplus from the prior year, that negative amount, the 1.1 million, that is the amount that reflects our contingency. So we didn't have one the year before. We had planned to spend all of our surplus. Yeah. And trustee benefits was the other one. I'm sorry, what was your question around trustee benefits?
I just wondered what that tracked. I wasn't aware that there were, I mean, when you're thinking traditionally of what benefits are, I wasn't aware there was. So I just wondered what that line entailed.
Yes, well, it's slightly misleading because it is benefits, but it's also statutory deductions. So it would include your CPP, EI, those sort of things. Yeah.
Perfect. That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
School journeys. Yeah, so this one is, it depends on whether or not the school or department has budgeted for school journeys. So for example, I'm pretty sure that in the international program, they had a trip that was planned to Japan, and I don't believe that there was budget set up for it. So you'll see sometimes that expenditures will go through, but there isn't budget associated with it. The budget is sitting in another object code. So sometimes we'll do budget adjustments to move budget from one object to another so that you don't see that. Other times they just manage their bottom line. So they might be over in one and under in another, but overall they're okay. So that's most likely what's happening in that line.
Trustee Duncan.
No, thanks, Chair. I just had a question around 331, 332, and 334. So this is contracted transportation assistance, and school journeys. So it looks like we're over budget at this point in the year, ranging from sort of like just 2% all the way up to 67%. And so I'm just wondering if we can get a little context and background around those line items.
So,
and sorry, that's on page 33 of the packet. Yeah.
So contracted transportation, those are the contracts that we have through facilities for busing. And the only thing I could think of, it's just slightly over, is that there's, so our budget is based on an estimate that the actual cost, the actual runs for each month vary, so that they're coming in over. Julie may be able to add to that if that's not correct. And so you'll see that's the 2%, so 20,000. Transportation assistance is transit passes, I believe, BC Transit. And so again, yeah, we're just, it's just an estimated budget. So I believe that's also in facilities. So they're gonna have a transportation budget overall, and then they're gonna put their costs against the budget line items. So they may have, I'm not sure what else is in there, but they may have budget left over from somewhere else, or perhaps they've just underestimated on what their BC Transit passes will be costing this year. School journeys, that's the same question I think that Karen was asking. So while it looks like it's 67%, over budget, most likely there's budget elsewhere, or in the case of international education, revenue that's come in to cover off those budgets.
Thank you.
Julie, for clarification.
So the busing costs, I think the reason it's in a deficit is because we set up a purchase order commitment at the beginning of the year for what our expected total cost would be, and that purchase order was higher than what the budget was. But as I'm looking at the invoices that are coming through, it looks like we actually should be hopefully under budget by the end of the year. But just because that commitment's still in there, it's showing that it's currently over.
Thanks so much for providing that context. That's really helpful.
Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to the 2023-2024 budget update. Again, Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you, Chair. So for this one, just providing an update on where we're at in the 2023-2024 budget process. I've noted on there that draft minutes from the February 9th Budget Advisory Committee meeting will be included in the February 27th regular board meeting agenda package. They'll actually be the approved minutes by then because we have a Budget Advisory Committee meeting coming up on February 23rd. And topics of discussion planned for that meeting were custodial services. So we're hoping to have some options presented to the committee for their consideration. There's also some department profiles that will be reviewed: financial services, information technology for learning, and human resource services. And then also based on a request from the last Budget Advisory Committee meeting, we're hoping to also have some music options presented at that meeting. And hopefully there will be enough time also to start looking at building consensus towards some recommendations to the board. I've kept on there the Representative Advisory Council of Students feedback and the Student Symposium event, because those reports, they were provided in the Budget Advisory Committee agenda package, but they'll be available in the February 27th regular board meeting agenda package as well. And I've added on there the public meeting. So we'll be having a public meeting regarding the budget on March 7th. And that meeting will be in person at the Uplands campus.
Okay. Questions, comments? Seeing none. We're all being very nice to the Secretary Treasurer these days. We'll move on to the Audit Committee report, and we have a proposed recommendation on this one. Secretary Treasurer, would you like to take this one too?
Sure.
You're doing so well, I don't want to mess up the opportunity.
I'm on a roll. All right. So the Audit Committee met on February 6th. We have two trustees new to the committee, and I will just share that Trustee Painter was nominated and accepted the committee chair. And at that meeting, we had one agenda item, and that was to review and discuss the December 2022 quarterly financial report. So that report was presented. There were lots of questions and discussion following the presentation, and the committee has recommended that the board accept the December 2022 quarterly financial report as was presented to the Audit Committee. So the memo and the report have been included in the agenda package. That was what was presented to the Audit Committee at that meeting.
Any questions or comments? Trustee Kwan.
Yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to thank both Katrina and Julie for their work on the memo that went with that report. I think it was very comprehensive. And if anyone has questions about the up and down and how things compare, you could probably find some answers in there. So I encourage my trustee colleagues to take a look at it when you get a chance. And thanks to Julie and Katrina for doing that.
So, and I apologize, I should have asked this question at the committee meeting. One of the points that was made is that the, and please correct me on this one, it's the EA budget or the EA substitute budget that was reduced as a result of placement or challenges with hiring and placements. And I was just wondering if we'll be looking to that budget going back to its original higher level next year, or are we going to be going forward with the reduced level? And I believe the senior leadership team is muted right now.
I wasn't sure if Julie wanted to
Yeah.
jump in on that one.
Yes, I would appreciate that. Oh, unless Julie.
What I can say is that the budget was adjusted. So we have had a historical lag, the hiring lag or inability to fill all of the positions. And so in the current year, we made a decision to reduce the budget because we were consistently seeing that portion of budget not being spent on relief. And so that is currently in the budget. I believe it was $620,000 that was reduced from the budget in the current year. And it is my understanding that that reduction will remain for the next year. Now, I think if we were to make any changes to how we replace EAs, we would definitely need to consider the budget impact of that.
Trustee Duncan? Oh, and Julie, do you want to jump in there just with clarification? Oh, okay. Trustee Duncan.
Oh, I'm happy to yield the floor to Julie. I can wait.
So yeah, my plan was to build in a hiring leg. I was going to look at the where the budget was versus how much we are projecting to year end. And there are different initiatives going on within every year to try to keep the EAs, but it's always a struggle. So I guess we would have to look at what kind of strategies were in place for next year and adjust accordingly. But the hope is we would not have to reduce any of the budget, but yeah, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to build in at least that.
Thank you. Trustee Duncan, do you have anything you wanted to? Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, well, first of all, thanks to Julie for that clarification on the approach that we're planning to take in terms of the budget. I think my hope is that, you know, we can see it as an option on the budget, like from the board's perspective, it's similar to what we saw last year, where it's kind of spelled out as an option for the board to consider. Because my hope is that the conversation that we started earlier this month around EA replacement and EA resourcing in general and will bear fruit, and that we will start to see some progress around changing strategies or looking to different processes that might support that end goal, which is to have more EAs replaced when they're out, and obviously to recruit and retain EAs at a higher rate. So yeah, if we saw that as an option for the board's consideration, I think that might align quite nicely with some of these other strategies and conversations we're having around EA resourcing moving forward into the next financial. So thanks so much.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we have a proposed motion that the Board of Education School District number 61, Greater Victoria, accept the December 2022 quarterly financial report as presented to the Audit Committee. A mover, Trustee Duncan, and all those in favor? And unanimous on that? Thank you. Move on to facilities. F1 operations update for February 2023. Over to you, Marnie.
Hi, thanks. Lots on the go, a little bit. So Grounds is still working on installing the split rail throughout the district, mainly at the elementary schools. Last Friday, I believe they're actually at Frank Hobbs, and Bartlett Tree Services did a really good presentation, explained to the little people, the kids, why they actually needed to aerate and why the split rail is important. So the big thing we have to finish is we have to get the signage up to kind of explain what we're doing. So that's going well. Shoreline classroom, we've submitted everything to the Township of View Royal, and now we're just waiting for the occupancy permit. So they're putting equipment and desks and everything in the new classroom. We're just waiting for that one final form. Vic West, we're working on the portable still. We're on track to have it open after spring break, as long as the City of Victoria will turn it around in quick order. So that's good. The 5 childcare sites that we have right now are progressing well. We've got the parts on order for the fob upgrade at James Bay, and as soon as we get that, then that school will be fob accessible. Lighting upgrades are going well. They're currently at Margaret Jenkins and Willows. And then I guess I'm sure everybody's heard last Friday and this weekend we had lots of cleaning done at Cedar Hill Middle School, and I think the school is cleaner than it's ever been. So that was unfortunate. It sounds like it's one of those TikTok challenges that are going on in the school districts. So we got hit with that. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. And it's cleaned up and we're moving on. So that's about it for operations. Any questions?
Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, just a big thank you to you, Marnie, and the team. I know that must have been a huge, unexpected, and unwelcome challenge to be faced with suddenly. So thanks for tending to it so quickly, so that the kids could get back and staff could get back to the classrooms. And then just another thank you. I just note that the inclusion of a reporting around the metal shops and a breakdown of where we are. I really appreciate that. So thanks so much.
Welcome.
Okay, we can move on to F2, the Vic High School Seismic Project Update.
Again, so I think we've finally turned a corner, or it feels like we've turned a corner. The school's starting to look like a school again. We've got a lot of drywall underway. There's mechanical and electrical installations are well underway. The replastering is going well. The stained glass windows, refurbishing of the stained glass windows looks amazing. So that's really good. Floor is actually being installed now. Our crews, the school district crews are actually in there installing millwork right now. So the classrooms are starting to look like in a classroom. We've got all the auditorium design complete now. Painting should start soon. We're just double checking with the actual approved paint colors. Scaffolding's up, the paint's going to start really soon. The large learning common doors are actually on site, and the carving should start soon. They're massive. One of them's 500 pounds, to give you an idea. So that's going to be really exciting, but the school is finally starting to feel like a school. So it feels like we've turned a corner finally. So good news. Questions?
Sorry, I'm just gonna. One question I had was with respect to the revised target dates, and it struck me that the interval between the last couple steps of the transition back into Vic High, it's not just that they're later, but that we have a longer period to accept transit or go to transition. Could you touch on that one, please?
The January 2024, is that the revised target date, the relocate school from SJ Willis? Or is it the final completion of Vic High project, July?
Well, it's more that substantial completion to relocate was going to be a month, and then just a couple months after that to final completion. And now we're looking September to January, January to July. So is that just about semester or? No,
so there's a little bit of planning in there. So the January date is when the kids are expected to be in the school. We're going to still have to be doing things behind the background anyways, especially in the NLC, we believe, and outside. So that's just more of finishing up all the little projects, getting everything signed off, and then getting all the paperwork into the ministry and getting all that signed off. So it just gives us a little bit of extra time to make sure that everything's complete. And we're looking at oh, sorry, the lights just turned off. We're looking at the project, and if we have any delays, we're kind of planning out right now to determine what plan B is, so we can make sure that the kids are in the school in January. And the thought is if we had to kind of wait on doing the learning commons, we could look at doing learning commons when the kids are still in classes in the school and just work around that. And that would put us to a later deadline as well, but the kids will still be in the school in January.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Gagnon.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the key milestones, the complete final tender package, we have the deadline of winter 2022. I see further down that we have tenders 1 through 10 done. I just want to confirm that tenders are
We're
done.
done. Yeah, we're 100% done tenders. Thank goodness. We're done.
Beauty.
No more.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And recognizing that whenever you open up an old building, nothing is ever certain, but are we at a point now where we feel, you can feel confident that we've uncovered most of the hidden, unforeseeable issues, and that we have a reasonably solid timeline going forward, or is there still potential for significant variability just because of the current market climate?
There's still some concerns with the market climate. We're having a lot of problems getting actual trades on site. So that's slowing us down, of course. There's still some structural issues that we're working through still and trying to determine those, but we're able to start putting the classrooms back together, which is nice. So what we've said to the group is, please work on the actual school to get the kids back in. And if we have to turn around and work on the auditorium at a later date, or we have to work at the NLC at a later date, we can hoard those off and then work on those when the kids are actually in the school. So we're kind of triaging things, I guess you could say, as we can go and prioritize them. But there's still some concern with this type of project. It seems like every time we knock on wood, we turn a corner, we seem to find out another problem. So hopefully we're done with our problems, but it's not. I can't say that with good confidence. How's that?
Understood. I think anyone else who's tried to renovate a 108-year-old building will commiserate. So. All right. Thank you very much. We're moving on. We have no disclosure of in-camera items. I see nothing on new business, but I'll just look for. Nope, still nothing. Okay, notice of motions? No. General announcements? No. Moving on to adjournment. Would anyone like to move to adjourn? Trustee Duncan. Any debate? All those in favor? And that is unanimous as well. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening, everyone. And that has to be about the quickest ops meeting I can remember in a